To unpack this, we are joined from Cairo by Dr. Khaled Dawood, managing editor at Al-Ahram Weekly. A very warm welcome to InFocus, sir. And, sir, what are your comments? You just heard the UN Security Council is on now. What were your main points that you nailed during this conference?
Well, again, I think that it reflected the international consensus almost, except for the administration of U.S. President Donald Trump, on the need for immediate ceasefire in Gaza and the unrestricted delivery of aid to Gaza, considering the extremely dire humanitarian situation that's unfolding on a daily basis, and even increasing over the past few weeks since Israel breached the ceasefire. The long-lived ceasefire, the short-lived, ceasefire that was negotiated by the United States, by the current U.S. administration. But unfortunately, seems that the current government in Israel, the current extremist government in Israel, is not heeding to any of the world warnings about the possible consequences of carrying out the plan to conquer Gaza city and displace more than 1 million people. Cause more suffering on the Palestinians because, again, that's coming to the world astonishment. The world, even before the announcement of the plan to invade Gaza, was already saying enough is enough and that this war has to stop. But instead of cooperating with the Egyptian-Qatari proposal that was presented to Hamas and accepted by the group, allowing a temporary ceasefire to take place, it seems that Netanyahu is depending on strong U.S. support from President Trump and insisting that he's going to go on with a massive military operation in Gaza City, perhaps to satisfy, or mainly to satisfy his right-wing base, that he's achieving more victories since this war started 2 years ago, and that before ending the war, he wants to deal more deadly blows to the Hamas as an organization. However, everybody recognizes, even inside Israel itself, that this the goal of total elimination of Hamas is basically an illusion. It will never happen. They never managed to do it over the past 2 years. And there's no reason to believe that the Israeli Prime Minister, by launching another massive attack, is going to lead to any different result.
So what are the key factors behind the increasing political criticism within the U.S. regarding American support for Israelis' military actions in Gaza?
Well, as you know, I mean, when President Trump was carrying out his election campaign, he said that as soon as he gets into the White House, he's going to end the war in Gaza and that he's going to end the war in Ukraine. But at least as far as Gaza is concerned, he made a point that on the first day he gets into the White House, a few of the Israeli prisoners held by Hamas were released on that same day, and the ceasefire took effect. But unfortunately, it seemed that he only cared about the theatrics of being on the first day in office, and at the same time, some hostages were being released. But after that, there is a kind of total coordination between Washington, the White House of President Trump, and Netanyahu, expanding the military campaign inside Gaza under the impression that military pressure on Hamas will force them to accept the Israeli terms for ending the war, or even reaching a ceasefire. And those terms are basically not acceptable at all, not just to the Palestinian people, but even to all regional countries, because obviously Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, backed by the U.S. administration, they both do not mind maintaining permanent Israeli military presence in Gaza, that Israel would maintain overall security control. Perhaps there would be no declaration of official occupation of Gaza or rebuilding settlements, but at the same time, both the Trump administration and the Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu speak on the same language when it comes to dealing with the famine situation in Gaza, accusing Hamas of being responsible, of being relatively negative on the latest Egyptian-Qatari proposal accepted by Hamas. seeking this compromise position by Hamas to even demand more from the Palestinian group by saying, no, we don't want a partial deal. We want a comprehensive deal. We want all the prisoners, Israeli prisoners, released at once, without at the same time giving any commitments to pull out the Israeli troops from Gaza, all of Gaza, including the border between Egypt and Gaza, or to declare a permanent end for this war, or even to give a clear position on when Mr. Netanyahu comes out and says he doesn't want the Palestinian Authority, he doesn't want Hamas. So whom does he want to run Gaza and making people's lives so difficult? So obviously, the Egyptian understanding, and one of the key reasons why Egypt has been moving as much as it can and with relentless effort over the past few weeks to bring Hamas to compromise, is the recognition that any new attack on Gaza City that would increase the suffering of the people, increase the killing. The real aim is to force the Palestinians towards the south and put pressure on Egypt again to accept the displacement of the Palestinian people, which is something Egypt will accept according to the statements made by the president and other key officials.
Sir, how influential is the pro-Israel lobbying group AIPAC in shaping U.S. policy on the Israeli-Gaza conflict, and how is this influence being perceived politically in Washington?
I think, AIPAC has always maintained very strong influence on U.S. politics, on U.S. elections, in particular Congress, whether for the House of Representatives or for the Senate. But allow me that the issue now goes beyond AIPAC and the traditional Israeli lobby within the United States, because the problem, if we say that we have a right-wing government in Israel right now, we also have a right-wing government in the United States of America. We have some key top officials in this administration, including the U.S. ambassador to Israel, Mike Huckabee, who believes in Israel as a religion and who does not refer to the West Bank as occupied territories, calling it Judea and Samaria. And we have the same thing with the Speaker of the U.S. House, Mr. Mike Johnson. He was visiting Israel recently, and he said the same thing, that the Judea, Samaria, which is the West Bank, was promised by God to the Israeli people. So when you have this kind of mentality within the administration, that basically creates more bias and more readiness to accept the Israeli plan on the settlement in Gaza, let alone the establishment of a two-state solution, which the present administration does not at all see it as a priority or as an urgent need, while many other countries, European countries, are taking a different attitude. And we've seen the U.S. Secretary of State basically ridiculing France, Britain, Australia, Canada for taking the decision to recognize the Palestinian state, but while saying this is meaningless. But those countries are taking this decision because they can see the danger that the current U.S.-Israeli alliance is causing to the Palestinian cause by simply liquidating that just cause of the Palestinian people and trying to kill forever the hope of establishing a Palestinian state, whether by this war of genocide in Gaza, the systematic war of genocide, or by the recent declarations of building more settlements in the West Bank. So this administration, let me remind you, already had a record during the first Trump term in office between 2017 and 2021 of recognizing East Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, while the whole world sees East Jerusalem as occupied territories. They recognized Israeli annexation of the Golan Heights. And there are many fears that among Arab countries that this administration, even it pushes for an end for the war in Gaza, would so-called reward Israel by recognizing its annexation of parts of the West Bank where major settlements were built. So to be very honest, I mean, this administration is providing Israel with total blind support. And even though the previous administration was not willing to put pressure on Israel to stop the war, but it certainly maintained some principled position on the two-state solution, on warning Israel that it won't supply some weapons if they continue mass killing of the Palestinian people. But with this administration, there are no limits, no kind of objections to any of the Israeli actions that are being taken since Trump came into the White House.